a helicopter, a trip to moon, 1 crore to start your own business, and a car worth 20 lakhs. Yes, you will get all of this if you vote for a particular candidate in India. These are the pre-election promises a Tamil Nadu candidate had offered in 2021, truly leaving no stones unturned. Now picture this, two governments, both giving money to the poor. One is a state of India spending a large part of its entire revenue just paying interest on its loans, while another is a country that has reduced its poverty by 50% in a decade. The same playbook, the same tools, but opposite results. We are talking about Brazil, which not just reduced extreme poverty by half in a decade, but has increased levels of education, better healthcare, and standard of living of the poor. So all these cash transfers, yet without running into a financial crisis every year? How? Welcome back to Angel One Economics. My name is Utsari, and today we are decoding why India's freebie culture is pushing states towards financial crisis and what we can learn from a country like Brazil that actually got it right. Do you know that Indian state governments go through a financial crisis every year, but you never get to know this because they keep borrowing, because before every election, the state governments promise this free money under the garb of social schemes and welfare, but at what cost? Even the Supreme Court of India has taken a notice that the state governments should not call it welfare schemes. These are actually just unconditional handouts which the local political parties got away with such bad financial planning, sending the state finances for a total toss just to stay in power. And what are these freebies? Freebies are unconditional cash transfers that don't help in any employment, any skill formation, any health benefits or education. There's also no sunset clause to it, as in there is no stop to this. Not like, okay, after 5 years, we will stop giving you this money, so it becomes politically impossible to withdraw. And honestly, why withdraw, right? If that is the bait for the people to vote for a particular party. Let me just tell you something very shocking. In 2022, Punjab promised its people 300 units of free electricity every month. And 1,000 rupees cash was given to every adult woman. And the cost of all of this was 20,000 crores annually. To put that in perspective, that's more money than Punjab spends on healthcare, roads, and education all combined. This is what's called populism, where the local governments throw money and schemes under the garb of welfare, but only if it comprises welfare, guys. We are talking about Punjab particularly because it has reached a state of debt that is unsustainable just because of this model of parasitic schemes that many other states have followed too. Look at this data. The debt has increased multi-folds over decades. The state debt has increased in the past 20 years by these amounts, a staggering increase of 20,000 crore rupees in between 2011 and 2022, and latest, a 33,000 crore rupees increase in between 2021 and 2022. And this is not one political party. It is all of them. All of them are the same. To beat the existing party, the new party comes with its own freebies, with its own schemes, with more populism, even if they criticized all these schemes in the first place as an opposition. For example, in 1997, the Punjab government announced free electricity for small-holding farmers. Then the successor expanded the schemes to all farmers regardless of the land sizes. And then the next government offered concessions to industries overlooking the tax evasions. And it starts before every election. The promises roll in, the same set of promises, free electricity up to 300 units, 1,000 per month. Sometimes it extends to 2,500 rupees per month for the women there. Free bus rides, free laptops for students, free LPG cylinders, free water. All of it. In Uttar Pradesh recently, free laptops were distributed so haphazardly that households got 3 to 4 laptops, which they then resold in the market. In Karnataka, 5 grand pre-election promises caused the state so much that there's barely any money left for highways or rural roads or schools or hospitals. And in Maharashtra, the Ladki Bahin Yojana costs 46,000 crores every year. And that is more than what the entire state spends on women and child welfare by a factor of 10. And now Punjab's debt is nearly 50% of its state's entire economy. So now Punjab is spending more money to repay the borrowings it blew to fund its populist schemes. In 2022 to 2023 alone, it spent 23% of its revenue on interest payments, 18% of its revenue on principal repayments to the loan. So over 40% of its revenue goes on servicing debt. Another 23% goes into subsidies, salaries. And the pension consumes 57% of its resources. So all in all, a hefty 122% of total revenue, which means it borrows more to pay its loans now. A largely unsustainable problem. Our focus should be to see beyond all this political landscape and understand the financial consequences, right? In the last 3 years, the unconditional cash transfers have increased by 5 times. And well, you can think whatever you want from this, but these schemes somehow always come under the garb of women welfare. Ladli Behan, Lakshmi Bhandar, Mahila Samman Yojana, all of them handing out various amounts of cash to the poor woman monthly. It goes up to 2,500 rupees per month. Are they beneficial? Definitely yes, I'm sure they are. But they are unsustainable and consequential. A very famous economist called Milton Friedman says that there is no lunch called free lunch. The reason is simple. There is no incentive in this way for the people to work hard, to participate in the labor force, to contribute to the economy in return, or be productive in producing an economic outcomes, since these cash transfers are all unconditional in nature. Now, before I move on to give you the example of Brazil, which has cracked this problem, let me just first show you how the financial crisis unfolds every year, but we don't get to know this. State promises freebies before election. It wins the election. Now it must deliver the promises, but it doesn't have enough revenue. So it borrows more money from the central government. Now it has to pay the interest on that debt. So now lesser money is available for actual development of better infra. So the economic growth now slows down due to lesser infra investments, which means the tax collection is either lesser or they increase the prices of the infra use. Like, you will notice hike in metro prices or toll tax. But still, it cannot suffice the big hole in the pocket. So what they do is they borrow even more and the debt compounds. Now recently when the states revised their budgets, all 6 major states increased their revenue expenditures. 5 states raised the fiscal deficit targets and only 2 states increased the capital expenditure. Now what this means is more money for handouts, less money for building things that actually grow the economy. Hence, you will notice that people never really stop complaining about the bad infrastructure, the roads, the metros, the bridges, the hospitals, the schools. The quality of basic amenities goes for a total toss, and your tax money goes into the so-called welfare schemes. Now, take Punjab's power sector as a case study, right? Free power for farmers and households sounds great, but the state electricity board runs at a massive loss. The Punjab government has to pay subsidies to cover those losses, right? But the state doesn't have cash, so it gives guarantees instead. These guarantees become off-budget liabilities. So when the power company can't service its debt, the state has to step in, which means more borrowing and as a result, lesser focus on infrastructure. But this is where we should all learn from Brazil. Even the Economic Survey of 2026 has mentioned that these freebie schemes in India cause a permanent fiscal liability. The problem is not welfare or the benefit of the people. The problem lies in the design of these policies. It says that we should learn from the countries like Brazil, Philippines, Mexico, who have cracked this problem. In 2003, Brazil was a total mess. Income inequality was among the highest in the world, with 13% of the population living below the international poverty line. The new president who came in that time had launched a program called Bolsa Familia. Family allowance, basically. It was also a cash transfer program. Now, the government would actually give money directly to poor families every month. But here's the crucial difference, and pay close attention to this because this is where India needs to learn from. The money comes with conditions. to receive the cash, families had to ensure children attended their schools. At least 85% of attendance was compulsory. They also had to get regular healthcare checkups, mandatory for pregnant women and children. And they also had to keep vaccinations up to date, documented and tracked. And they also had to maintain nutritional monitoring for younger children. And there were these rules set to enforce this mechanism. First violation, warning letter. Second violation, benefits blocked for a month. Third violation, benefits suspended totally. And in fourth violation, the enrollment was just cancelled. And this is how Brazil reached 13.5 million families and 46 million individual beneficiaries, which is about 25% of its entire population. Yes, their extreme poverty fell from 13% to 3%, and 7 million people were lifted out of poverty in just 1 decade. In education, school enrollment increased dramatically. More students completed the programs, and the high school dropout rates fell significantly. In healthcare, the hospital admission rates under 5 years of age decreased significantly. More kids were getting vaccines than ever before. Infant mortality rate dropped as well. And a study suggests that the program prevented millions of hospitalization and deaths over 2 decades. And here's the surprising part. It wasn't expensive. The program costed about 0.5% of Brazil's GDP annually. Compare that to India, where some states are spending nearly 2% of state GDP on unconditional handouts. The program was so successful that it became a model copied worldwide. Today, over 40 countries run similar conditional cash transfer programs like Brazil. Mexico, Colombia, Philippines, Indonesia followed. Even the World Bank, which was historically skeptical of large welfare programs, called it a great political success. In India, the cash transfers are unconditional, guys. Often given to everyone in a category, not just the poor. There is barely any verification to check the outcomes of these freebies or who takes it and how they take it. The timing collides with the elections always, and the expenses keep increasing with no cap, and neither any associated services are given, and this leads to a major leakage problem. The money sometimes goes to people who do not need it. In Brazil, the cash is tied to specific behaviors. Income verification is done to reach the poorest, their health and education outcomes are tracked, and the policy is institutionalized with law and not election manifestos. Hence, the costs are controlled and predictable. And there are associated services as well that help in schooling, healthcare, job training to raise the people to a standard of living post which they don't need the freebies anymore. To conclude, freebies don't just show up as a crisis in year one. Once a state's budget is locked into interest payments, subsidies, salaries, and pensions, the policy choice disappears. Now, Brazil understood this pretty early. They didn't reject welfare, they disciplined it. They didn't treat cash transfers as vote mechanisms or vote instruments. They treated them as investments in future taxpayers, like any local government should typically do. In 2024 to 2025, the state fiscal deficits in India widened again to 3.3% of the gross state domestic product. Not because states suddenly became reckless spenders, but because the revenue support from the center declined. GST compensation ended, revenue deficit grants shrank, and instead of adjusting those spending structures and fixing the loopholes in the policy design, most states chose the easiest path, which is politically easy, which is borrow more. Now let's look at the pipeline ahead. By 2025 to 2026, 16 states are budgeting the fiscal deficits above 3%. And 3% is the permissible level, by the way. And 13 states above 3.5%. That's not counter-cyclical spending anymore. That's just structural imbalance. The moment growth slows down from weaker infrastructure investment, poorer human capital outcomes, or rising inflation, these ratios snap back violently. And that's already visible in the budget behavior. Despite all the talk on development recently, the revenue expenditure is accelerating. The social sector spending is dominating, not the capital creation, not the infrastructure that is important. Only a handful of states are meaningfully raising infrastructure outlays. Asset monetization and non-tax revenues are being discussed recently, not because they have a vision, not because they are visionary, but because traditional tax bases are being exhausted for so much of expenses. India's question today isn't whether to help the poor or not. If welfare doesn't build human capital, if it doesn't raise productivity, if it doesn't remove people out of dependency, then it isn't welfare, guys. It's deferred debt. And the final question every voter, every policymaker, and state finance department should answer is this: do we want budgets that win elections or economies that survive them? That choice will decide India's next decade. That's it from my side. Thank you for watching, everyone. If you like this video, please hit like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any suggestions, please drop in the comments below. See you in the next one.
Investments in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.